This gang disguised themselves as Jews to steal an 86-carat diamond and some other smaller diamonds. There were 4 of them in total, and their leader was Frankie. After the successful heist, they went to London to meet a diamond dealer named Doug on behalf of Avi. He's a jeweler in New York and a notorious organized crime figure, an American Jew. But carrying an item worth millions of dollars like this is very dangerous. So, one guy told Frankie to buy some heat from the ex-agent Boris, just in case something happened, so they could handle it. But human greed is bottomless. Although they were comrades who had been through thick and thin, this guy planned to collude with the ex-agent to steal the diamond from Frankie. Before the diamond transaction took place, he called the ex-agent to strategize and set up the robbery of that diamond. The clear target was just the diamond, not to harm anyone, and they would hire people to carry out this job so their identities wouldn't be revealed. And here's Turkish, the owner of an underground boxing ring and casino. Along with him is Tommy, his capable assistant who helps Turkish run the underground boxing business. But wanting to operate in the underworld like this, naturally, they would have to deal with the local kingpin, Brick. He is a notorious kingpin in the illegal business sector and extremely wealthy. Those who cross him will disappear. Brick quite likes Turkish, so he wants him to convince his fighter, George, to fight against his fighters to fix the match. Knowing this old guy is not someone to mess with, Turkish had no choice but to agree. Coincidentally, he was also thinking about upgrading to a new caravan, so this was a good opportunity to earn extra money. So, Turkish sent his subordinates, Tommy and George, to buy a caravan from a group of Irish travelers. The two went to see Tommy's good friend, Mickey, to arrange the purchase of the caravan. The transaction went very smoothly, but when Tommy started the caravan and hadn't gone far, a wheel fell off, making him furious. He immediately found Mickey demanding a refund, but he flipped the script, demanding Tommy beat him in a boxing match to get the money back. With no other choice, Tommy had to send George into the fight to teach this plastic pig some manners. The fight began. While Mickey was busy taking off his shirt, he immediately got hit twice in the gob, and finally took a kick that sent him flying. Although he was hit first, Mickey felt extremely excited, feeling like he was back in his prime boxing years from long ago. It turned out Mickey was once a boxing champion, but because he couldn't control himself, he nearly sent his opponent to meet his maker. Okay, no more joking around. Mickey started taking off his royal robe and unleashed a devastating blow that left George stunned right there. Turkish was extremely worried when he found out his guy was beaten so badly, he ended up in the hospital. There were only a few days left until the fixed matches were supposed to happen, and now he didn't have a fighter. With no other option, Turkish convinced Mickey to replace George in the fight for £10,000. But after the caravan deal, he knew this guy was cunning as hell. He complained it was too little and demanded Turkish also buy his mom a new caravan. This time, Turkish gave in and had to discuss it again with the boss, Brick. Hearing this, he also had no choice but to accept Mickey's demands, but on the condition that he must lose in the 4th round so he could rake in money from the bettors. The fight began. It seemed like everything would go smoothly, but unexpectedly, Mickey didn't follow the plan. The guy was quite aggressive and landed a fatal blow, putting his opponent in a coffin, leaving Turkish and Brick stunned. The boss was furious and blamed Mickey, but he genuinely didn't mean to because the opponent was too weak. Turkish felt things weren't good, planning to make a run for it, but Brick caught on as if reading a book. He ordered his men to stop Turkish and forced him to convince Mickey to fight one more match to recoup the losses, specifically losing in the 4th round. If he didn't do exactly as requested, well, everyone knows the result. To ensure Turkish didn't bail, Brick took all of Turkish's money. He had no choice but to ask Mickey to fight another match. But right now his pockets were empty. Therefore, he had to relay Mickey's conditions to the boss. Hearing this, he wasn't just furious anymore. He was burning with rage. He immediately sent men to trash Turkish's casino, and not only that, they also cremated Mickey's mother's caravan, along with her inside. When Mickey found out, he was devastated, and finally, he experienced Brick's cruelty firsthand. For the safety of his people, he had no choice but to agree to fight another match. Over here, the robbers, after setting up their plan, found out Frankie was a gambling addict. Knowing this, the ex-agent Boris agreed to give Frankie a handgun without taking money. In return, he set a condition that Frankie had to place a bet on his behalf at Brick's betting shop. To avoid suspicion, Boris claimed he had insider information. If he weren't blacklisted from the betting shop, he wouldn't have needed to ask him. Hearing about gambling, Frankie's eyes lit up like headlights. He immediately agreed right then and there. But before going to the betting shop, he had to sell the small diamonds first. So Frankie went to Doug for the transaction and kept rushing him to check them quickly so he could get to the betting shop. After learning Frankie wanted to go to the betting shop, Doug felt worried. So he immediately called the jeweler Avi, who was also the mastermind behind this heist. Knowing Frankie's passion for gambling, he personally flew to London with his bodyguard to retrieve the diamond. Meanwhile, over here, to execute his plan, the ex-agent Boris hired two rookie pawnbrokers, Vinny and Sol, to rob the diamond from Frankie. Boris hired them for £50,000 to rob the betting shop. Any winnings were theirs to keep. His only goal was the briefcase of a man with 4 fingers. Hearing such a sweet deal, of course, the two had no reason to refuse. They teamed up with a fat getaway driver, so this job should have been in the bag. But the group was stuck with a dog. It was used as a medium for gold and diamond transactions with the travelers, so they always had to bring it along. With no choice, the 3 of them, plus the dog, drove and parked in front of Brick's betting shop to wait for the target with 4 fingers carrying the briefcase. But they didn't know that Frankie was unconscious in the van they had crashed into earlier. They waited there for a while and finally spotted a man carrying a briefcase entering the betting shop. Sol thought this was the target and launched an all-out assault, rushing in with the heat to threaten the secretary. But she wasn't scared at all because betting time was over and the money had already been transferred, so there was nothing left. Sol also realized the person they were targeting wasn't the 4-fingered man. Just then, the receptionist snatched the gun and pulled up the security screen. The two tried to escape, but were locked in by the security door. Sol tried using the gun to break the glass, but unexpectedly, it didn't break and the bullet ricocheted back. Vinny thought he'd been shot. Just when the two were desperate, the fat driver managed to open the door to free them, and they were also caught on camera. But there's always a silver lining. While escaping, they accidentally spotted Frankie getting out of the van. But they discovered the briefcase and Frankie's hand were handcuffed together and couldn't be separated. Well then, the whole group had to lug Frankie back to their base as well. After receiving word that the target was captured, Boris also came to the pawn shop. Learning the 3 got nothing from the betting shop, he gave them each £10,000 for breakfast money. But Sol and his accomplices discovered the existence of the diamond. It turned out, wanting to save his life, Frankie had told them about the diamond in the briefcase. After grasping this information, Sol refused the money Boris offered and demanded he give them half the proceeds from selling the diamond. These robbers were really pushing their luck. Boris didn't say a word, just pulled out his heat and put Frankie in a coffin, right then and there. But the diamond was in the briefcase, and the only person who knew the combination was now dead. Boris was truly speechless with these guys, chopped off Frankie's arm, gave them a warning, and left with the diamond. Meanwhile, Brick found out his betting shop was robbed and checked the camera footage. He was burning with rage and ordered his men to capture those 3 guys and bring them back to be fed to the pigs. With 16 pigs, there probably wouldn't even be bones left of these 3 guys. Not wanting to meet their maker, they had no choice but to reveal the story about the diamond and beg for 48 hours to bring it back to him. Although Brick wasn't particularly interested, it was still money, and who turns down money? So he agreed to give the 3 guys 48 hours to fulfill their promise. Meanwhile, the jeweler Avi and Doug were also getting hotter than ever about the diamond. The two shelled out £40,000 to hire a hitman named Bullet Tooth Tony to find Frankie's whereabouts and the diamond. And very quickly, he got a lead from an informant. In the end, it was our Sol again. Who knows what this guy ate to have such bad luck? Having a gun pointed at his head 3 times in one day left him extremely depressed and broken down. So he immediately revealed the location of the diamond, currently held by Boris. Just then, Avi called, saying he had spotted someone trying to sell the 86-carat diamond via camera feed, and it was none other than Boris. So they ordered Boris captured and forced him back to his place to get the diamond. Seeing Avi's bodyguard accompanying them covered in blood, it's clear this ex-agent Boris is no pushover. Finally, they got the diamond, but just then, Sol and his 2 cronies were also tailing them. Over here, Turkish and his subordinate Tommy were looking for Boris to buy weapons. But on the way, Tommy snatched Turkish's milk carton and threw it out. Meanwhile, Avi's group was discussing how to deal with Boris. The bodyguard pulled out a fruit knife, suggesting chopping him into 100 pieces, but it looked too lame, and so he brought out a large cleaver. But just then, Turkish's milk carton accidentally hit their car's windshield, causing them to crash. The bodyguard holding the cleaver paid a heavy price. The car door burst open, and Boris took the opportunity to escape. Meanwhile, Tony and Avi took advantage of the gawking crowd around their car to slip away with the diamond. The two went into a pub. While Avi went to the restroom to treat his wounds, the trio of robbers also showed up there. They used guns to threaten Tony into handing over the diamond, but his face showed no emotion. Turns out Tony had realized their guns were fakes because they had replica engraved on the side. So he pulled out his real gun, scaring the crap out of the group, who quickly scrammed. But as the group ran out into the hallway, they accidentally encountered Avi holding the briefcase. Sol thought he could try again, raising the fake gun threateningly. Just then, the resilient Boris also managed to get there with his heat, looking for the diamond. Tony, inside, felt something was wrong and ran out to see what was happening. So he immediately opened fire repeatedly, putting Boris in a coffin right then and there. Taking advantage of the chaos, Sol and Vinny fled with the briefcase containing the diamond, leaving the fat driver behind, wounded by a bullet. But when the two arrived in front of the betting shop, ready to give the diamond to Brick, just then Tony and Avi caught up with them. Having no other choice, Sol lied, saying they had left the diamond at Vinny's pawn shop. But after searching for a while, there was nothing. Turns out Vinny had pretended to lose the diamond and blamed his dog. It was the culprit that had swallowed the diamond. Damn, if the dog could talk, it would probably curse its owner to hell and back. Avi immediately demanded Tony cut the dog open to get the diamond out. But Vinny really loves dogs. Hearing this, Vinny panicked and relented, pulling the diamond out of his trousers for Tony. After checking, Avi confirmed it was the real deal, but his smile didn't even have time to form before it vanished. The dog, feeling aggrieved, snatched the diamond and ran off. Avi, furious, wildly fired shots at the dog, but a stray bullet accidentally took Tony down. He never expected that after a lifetime as a hitman, he'd go down like this. Avi felt utterly hopeless about himself. He returned to New York and vowed never to come back to London ever again. Meanwhile, over here, the boxing match was about to begin. After his mother's passing, Mickey wasn't himself anymore. Day and night, he only befriended alcohol to forget his sorrow. And this was exactly what Turkish feared most. Brick had sent men to watch Mickey's place and the Irish traveler camp. If Mickey didn't last until the fourth round as agreed, he would take care of not just everyone there, but Turkish and Tommy too. Very quickly, the match took place. Mickey entered the ring with a very confident air, but during the fight, he pretended to just dance around as if he had no intention of fighting seriously. Soon enough, in the fourth round, he got knocked flat on his face by his opponent. But just as the referee reached the final second of the count, Mickey surprisingly stood up and delivered a devastating blow, knocking out his opponent. Well shit, the plan to fix the match was ruined. Turkish and Tommy hastily made their escape. Meanwhile, Brick was furious. He immediately ordered his men watching the Irish traveler group to act. But unexpectedly, the Irish travelers had already set up an ambush there, and a shootout ensued. In the end, the boss Brick and his men paid the price for the evil deeds they had committed. It turned out Mickey had planned this all along. He knew that whether he won or lost the fight, he would likely end up dead anyway. That's why he had set up this perfect revenge plan. The next morning, Turkish and Tommy went to the traveler campsite to look for the prize money, but there was nothing left. Turns out Mickey and his associates had already disappeared with the prize money. Just then, the police also showed up because of the shootout the previous night. When the police questioned the two of them, they didn't know how to explain why they were there. Just then, Vinny's dog suddenly appeared. So they had an excuse. They were just walking the dog. On the way back, the two saw Sol and Vinny and their crew getting arrested as the police found Frankie's and Tony's bodies in their car. Sol and Vinny watched Turkish and Tommy drive away with the dog in despair. On the way back, Tommy suggested Turkish keep the dog, but he couldn't stand the squeak sound coming from its stomach. So the two took it to a vet and removed the toy it had swallowed. Inside, there was also an 86-carat diamond, making them overjoyed. Finally, the vet referred them to Doug to sell the diamond. After verifying it was genuine, he immediately called Avi. So Avi had no choice but to pack his bags and head to London. Although he had sworn never to return to London again, that was the story from 5 minutes ago. Things were different now. And that's where the movie ends. Thanks for watching the whole video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive the latest videos soon.